All right, we're live. All right, Al, thanks for coming on the Journeyman podcast. This has been a long time coming, and I really appreciate you taking your time out of your evening to join us here. Before we start, I just want to say this. I've been trying to practice a little bit more gratitude lately in my life, and I think we both can agree that a couple of years ago was a sort of a rough patch for all of us. And just you being there as a presence in the gym and us being able to do what we wanted to do for that amount of time really kept me on the mats. And this was at the beginning of my journey. So I just want to extend my gratitude and my thanks to you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being the person that you are and the good person that you are, and thanks for everything that you do. So I just wanted to start this interview with that.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's the feeling is very much mutual, and I feel like I owe you and Shane and Jay and the rest of the group, Mikey Regs and all of them, a debt of gratitude too. That was a particularly tough time in my life as well, other than the obvious, right? COVID and everything. But I had my personal struggles too throughout that. Family members passing, good friends passing, and they were difficult times. And the world was upended, and I didn't know if all this time that I'd put into jujitsu, if I was ever going to be able to do it ever again. And so to have a group like you guys to be able to go to and know that, we were safe and, we were looking out for each other, that meant the world to me. So that got me back to the mats. And I can't thank you guys enough. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so let's start. Let's start from the beginning. Let's go way back when
Way back.
Al was a wee little lad. Let's,
Yeah.
let's talk about let's talk about like sort of like you growing up, and I think the listeners would want to hear this.
Sure.
How you sort of like what your background was or is, and then like maybe your progression into martial arts, and then sort of that beginning of your origin story, so to speak.
All right, cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 46 years old, born in 1970, the 1900s, as the kids would say today. Um, and when
I'm
I was
still
a
I'm
kid,
still older than you.
that's true. And better looking. So if you got that, you got two things going for you. So I no, so yeah, I'm 46. I started martial arts. I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. I grew up in the area here in Fishkill, New York, and in a nice, condominium complex, very, sort of, middle of the road, sort of just everything, the vacations and summers away and the whole thing, a little middle class experience, right?
Right.
But one thing I did that did happen a lot was I got bullied pretty frequently, and my parents are both from the city. They're both from the Bronx, and my dad had that sort of tough Bronx edge to him, and yeah, but it didn't translate to me. It didn't it didn't come out in the genes right away. So I was a very reserved child. I was very sort of shy and sort of easy to the big lovable giant kind of thing. I've always been the
Yeah.
big kid.
Yeah.
Um, and I spent many years getting like physically, beat up and tortured, head held under in the pool and pushed off the deep end and beat up in the woods and the whole thing. And I would come home crying and all that stuff. And I remember when prior to getting into martial arts, my dad sat me down. I came in home crying after whatever happened, snots and tears, the whole thing. And I come running in and he said, look, you're going to go back outside and you're going to sit on that front porch and you're going to watch them all walk by. I don't care how many fights you get into. I don't care how many fights you think you win. You're going to go stand your ground tonight and you're going to stand out there. And it was a great lesson for me in like self-confidence and perseverance, like, yeah, stand your ground once in a while, stand up, put your chest out and, put your
Right.
chin up and face it. Um, that went so far, and then I continued to get beat up, and so one day I had finally had enough, and I had been watching Karate Kid was huge,
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
kids growing up, and so I obviously related a bit to Daniel-san and him getting picked on and stuff. We can go back to that later because I've since watched it with my son and have a totally different viewpoint of that movie now, but
The original one though, right? The
the
original,
original, correct? Yeah,
not the
yeah.
remake.
Not the remake. No, 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 no. So in any case, I had gotten this altercation with a couple of the neighborhood bullies off the bus, and one threw an ice ball at me, hit me in the head, and I just snapped. The running, the joke is you see red. I really did. Like it was the first time in my life that I felt rage. And I ran at these kids and I punched one of them square in the face, broke his nose, bleeding everywhere, and shocked me, shocked him, you know. So I'm chasing him through the neighborhood because now I've had enough. And I say, you know, you smell the blood in the water, and it was on. So I chase this kid through the neighborhood. Eventually, my mom's driving in from work, and he jumps in front of the car. Stop, 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 Miss Garner, get your son off me. Okay. I hop in the car, and the first thing my mom said to me, well, one, you know, first, are you okay? And the second thing she said to me was, do you want to start karate? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So we did. There was a local place here called Southington Karate. There was a couple of schools in the area. It was Tang Sudo was the style, and you know, through that experience, I gained a lifelong appreciation of martial arts. Funny, we're talking now. I was talking to my mom 2 days ago, and I was driving to. I teach the kids class at our gym, one of the kids classes, and I was driving, talking to her. She's talking to my son, and she asked me. She said, it's impressive that you stayed with it your entire life. And I said, Mom, I got you to thank for that moment. Like you saw me at my weakest and said, do you want to do something about this? And you put it on me to go do something about it. And that lesson stuck with me through the rest of my life. So, so in any case, I started in karate. I've dabbled in everything from karate to a little bit of Aikido to some Jeet Kune Do for a few years prior to eventually landing on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So
So did you do any wrestling or anything like that? Or
no. My only wrestling experience was in junior high. Two experiences. One was the coach coming to me and saying, you should try out for the team. I said, do I got to wear that crazy outfit thing? And he said, yeah, of course, a singlet. Yeah, you gotta. I'm good. I'm okay. Now, in hindsight, I wish someone would have said, hey, you like martial arts, right? You want to go do it in school and like on the clock and, as part of your curriculum? Right. I would have been all in, but any case, I know wrestling was not in my in my cards at that point. My only other experience with wrestling was when I was in karate in elementary school. I had gotten up to my, whatever it was, red belt or whatever. And I was at a party boasting about my new promotion. And this junior high school wrestler swiftly double-legged me into the ground and stayed on top of me. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't like how that felt. That was no good. That helpless feeling, of being stuck and not knowing what to do. So, but yeah, no wrestling, just pure martial, like the traditional martial arts. And then ultimately, again, 2010, I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
2010. So literally, you had like a Christmas story moment with the ice ball.
Oh, it was total Christmas
like
story.
A Ralphie, you had a Ralphie moment.
Yeah. My best friend Tara, she's talked about it since, and she's been my friend since we were little kids. My mom and her mom were best friends in the city, so they moved up together.
Yeah,
generations of friends. But she tells a story, and she's like, I thought you were going to kill him. She's like, I'd never seen anything like it in my life. Your face went bright red. You were screaming and yelling, I said, okay.
Right. So it's 2010. If you don't mind sharing, like where were you in your life? Like what was going on? What prompted you to get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah. So, my first experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, I checked out a school locally around here. So I started in 2010. So that had to be like 2002, 2001, prior to starting Jeet Kune Do. I just couldn't afford it at the time. It was too far from where I lived. Didn't have the gas money to get back and forth all the time. So I found Jeet Kune Do and did that for a few years. But what I saw that day, I was like, wow, that's something else. The camaraderie in the room and, the techniques they were doing, it was impressive. So fast forward to 2010. So I started in September of 2010. January of 2010, I was with my doctor. I had been experiencing crazy anxiety attacks and all kinds of health issues. I had gained an incredible amount of weight. I was 32 at that point, 31, right. 32 years old, married, no child yet. And, life just kind of gets on you. You're early in your career and you're, kind of moving. And it just packed on. And just living an unhealthy lifestyle, not feeling my best ever on any given day, and experiencing these anxiety attacks that were crippling to say the least. Kind of episodes where you walk into a space like a mall or a store and you just like you feel the whole world coming in on you. You want to take a knee. So I'm talking to my doctor about it, and I've been seeing him for a while, and we got it under control. But then finally, he says to me, he's like, there's three keys to these anxiety attacks, and it's sleep, It's diet and it's exercise. And he's like, we've approached the sleep, you know, you're sleeping better, that's getting better. He's like, your diet has obviously improved, you've lost a few pounds or whatever. He's like, but the exercise part, we got to work on that. He goes, you talk a lot about, you know, we've talked about your martial arts as a kid and how you like UFC, and why don't you go try some of that UFC stuff? And and I said, oh, okay, yeah, UFC stuff. And then I remembered that meeting, you know, meeting those folks in the gym, you know, a few, 9 years prior. And I was like, I want to go find a local gym. I think I want to try jujitsu. And also, like, same time, like the Joe Rogan podcast had become kind of big and
Right.
or was getting bigger. And there was an episode with Ricky Schroeder. I don't know, whenever it was, like way early, like
Wow.
episode
Yeah, yeah.
15, 20, you know, somewhere around there. And he
Yeah.
had talked about him being he was in jujitsu. Him and Joe were going back and forth. And so all these things are kind of like the universe is kind of pinging at me, like, hey, you got to go
Yeah.
try it out. And ultimately, it was the weirdest thing. I met, and I don't know if you've ever met him, but his nickname was Judo Tom. You know,
No.
old judoka from the area, did jujitsu for a long time. He's working at a local grocery store. I'm online getting deli meat or whatever, and I see he's got this. There used to be a brand called On the Mat, and he's got this On the Mat T-shirt. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, hey man, is that a jujitsu shirt you're wearing? And he goes, oh yeah, it's jujitsu. He's like, why, you train? You know, because that's always the question. Somebody messages you, oh, you train? You know? And I
Yeah.
said, no, but I'm looking to. And he goes, oh man, and he takes me aside, you know, stops whatever he's doing. Poor person, probably Ham was probably sitting there for 10 minutes
Yeah,
while
of
we were
course.
bullshitting, you know. So in any case, we got talking, and he's like, come down to this place, come check it out. I went, I think that was a Monday. I think my first class was on like a Thursday or Friday. Like, I called the gym, I signed up. That's where ultimately I met, you know, Mike and, you know, the crew that, the Evolution Grappling crew. And, you know, it was a tremendous experience. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So where was he? Where was he at that point? 2010. Where was Mike? Where was the gym at that point? That was that down on
Oh,
Main Street, or was that
there was no Evolution at that point.
there was no
No,
Evolution?
we had met at a different gym, another gym in the area,
Oh, okay.
that we were
Yeah.
that he had been training at, and I ultimately started at.
Right. Of
And you know, through you know how it is, and people
course.
know how it is. It's you pair up with people over and over again, and you've developed these bonds and these friendships. And
Yeah.
Mike and I were very quick to become friends. And guys like Mike Santora and Cabeso and the guy named Brian Borsma, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Those were guys who, like, we gravitated together. They helped me a lot. Especially Mike. You know, Mike was probably the biggest one in that. And you know, when he made the decision to open his own space and his own, you know, go his own way, for me it was like, well, I've spent so much time with you. I don't feel I couldn't not go with you, you know.
Right.
So I started training with him. I think it was 2012 at that point. I'd just gotten my blue belt, and you know, he had the urge to open the space we know and love now. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what like early on, so you're as a blue belt, what were let's go with that.
yeah,
Because I only know you as an upper belt.
right,
Right.
yeah.
I don't know the Al, like, the beginning of his journey Al. So like
Yeah,
what
it
was it
was
like, share this with the audience, because I think because you're a black belt now,
right.
and you've been doing this for a long time,
Yeah.
and you were very accomplished black belt. So what were some of the issues that you had early on? Like, what were some of your struggles that you had early on? Just sort of going through the ranks. Like, what were some of
Yeah.
the things that you were getting stuck on, or sort of commonalities that you had with other people struggling at the time?
Yeah. Okay. That's a really actually a great question. So, you know, I would say, like, in the beginning for me, like, coming in, you know, 315, 20 pounds, pack a day smoker, not athletic in the least at that point. Um, you know, for me, it was a test of wills. It was a test of wills to show up every time. I didn't ever not want to go. I wanted to be there 7 days a week if I could, you know, twice a
Right.
day. But you know, it's the training, I guess, modalities have changed over time. When I started, and this is not to disparage the previous gym, because, you know, the people there are great people, great instructors. So this is not meant to disparage, just to, you know, illustrate a point that over time, training methods change. When I
Right.
started, it was very much common to kind of throw you to the wolves, right? There was no intro course, there was no, fundamentals class. There
Right.
was, hey, class is at this time, 6 to 7. You show up, you're gonna do your warm up, you're gonna learn 3 techniques. We're gonna pair up and roll for the rest of the time until you're ready to leave.
Get in a closed guard. What's a closed guard? Like,
Right. Yeah.
like, what are we talking about?
And even that, like in that sort of way of teaching, it's changed now. Guys like Greg Soders is changing things with the ecological approach, and a lot
Right.
more coaches are starting to bring in the constraint-led approach. So we're looking at we're trying to figure out different
Yeah.
ways to translate information to people and make it stick. For me, I spent probably the first 2 years learning how to get my butt kicked, learning how to
Exactly.
persevere.
Learning the most efficient way to get your butt kicked.
Yeah, I would say, like, the old kind of an older school mentality, like the tough and like the grind and that. I appreciate where we are now. I would love to like do the Men in Black like memory wipe and start
Right. Of
today
course.
and to
Yeah.
where we are now. I think people are learning faster than we were back then. It was the beginning of, like, not the beginning of YouTube. That was around for a while at that point. And I probably watched every single YouTube tutorial known to mankind. And I was the typical, like, oh, I've got the new move and this is going to be the thing. And I'm going to, you
I'm
got
gonna
to
do
go
my
through.
cartwheel pass today.
Yeah,
That's gonna
cartwheel
get
pass.
him.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna Berimbolo, like, right. So I think that's one thing. I think the question was like, what's changed and how's it a little different. That's one thing that's changed dramatically is the access to information. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. Even in the five or so years I've been doing it, it's grown so much.
yeah, and I think the quality of the information is getting better too.
Yeah.
A lot of the early instructionals, when you watch them back, they're poorly edited, really hard to understand,
Right.
horrible lighting and camera angles. Where you fast forward to today and it's like Hollywood productions, man, and they're
Yeah.
doing it like off of their iPhones. It's
Yeah.
crazy. These young whippersnappers.
Yeah. It's like it's almost like paralysis by analysis though. There's so much information out there
Yeah.
that it's like if you're just getting into the sport and you don't have the foundations or you don't know the foundations, it's almost like where do you start?
Yeah, and not coming from a wrestling background and having no grappling experience at all, that was also like a big eye opener for me too. Like
Right.
the something simple like the fear of falling. Like, it took me forever to get over the fear of break falling or
Right.
getting like single legged and taken down.
Yeah.
Um, these days, people learn it pretty early, and we do it. We train in a safe and effective manner. With that mutual understanding that as you get better, then I gain a better training partner, and vice versa, so on and so forth, for all time. I'm not so sure, not the previous gym I was at, but in general, like, jujitsu has gone through this transformation of better, of trying to get better at instructing and passing the knowledge on.
Of
It doesn't
course.
have to be this old school thug mentality of beating people up and all that stuff. That's not what this is about. That's not how you learn.
But you would agree that there is an element of, I mean, at some point everyone's got to go through the grind.
You got to grind. Yeah,
You
there's
got to
no
grind. I
way
mean,
around that.
there's no way around it.
No, yeah. I don't mean this to say, like,
Of course.
we're gonna lay down like a bed of roses for you and pat your head while you're. It's a
Right.
very welcoming environment, especially where we speak of where we're at now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's a very welcoming environment, but there's also an expectation that you're going to bring your best version of yourself to
Yeah,
the mats each and every time, and that's on each of us to do in our personal lives, right? Try to do what we
definitely.
can to be the best version. And then when I show up there, I don't want to waste your time for 6 minutes, right? If I'm hungover and I'm not going for my walks, I'm not in shape, I'm not
Right.
not with it, I that's a waste of everyone's time,
Yeah, I
including
think
yours and my own.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's for me, like having been in it for a few years now. And let me know what you think about this. It's
Hmm.
like I think the biggest um what I've gotten the most out of jujitsu is not necessarily the skills, of course, like to some degree, and obviously, we're all evolving in that area. but it's almost like just the mindset and just the way I live my life. You
Yeah.
know, I think for me, and I think I speak for a lot of people, that's been the best part of jujitsu is
Yeah.
just prioritizing and just trying to live a better, just trying to always improve myself.
Yeah, yeah, and coming to terms with the fact that you're not always going to be your best self every day,
Yeah,
right? And
definitely.
it's for me, the part I cherish the most is the community around jujitsu, and in our gym and outside of our gym.
Right,
You can go anywhere in the world.
right.
I've been to a few places. We were in Amsterdam a bunch of years ago, and we trained at a place in Amsterdam, and they treated us like we knew them forever because we trained jujitsu, right? Because we did
Yeah,
this crazy thing together.
yeah,
That's that sentiment travels with you, and it's part of, it's like you're part of you're part of something.
yeah.
I'm not a religious person. I grew up I grew up Catholic, but stopped going to church probably in sixth grade, seventh grade. But the one thing I do miss about it was the community aspect, and I
Right.
get that in jujitsu. We
Yeah.
often joke about open mat being our church, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say
We're
that.
here for the sermon, and
Yeah.
but there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
It is what they call a third place, and we need that in our
definitely.
culture and our society. We have to have those third places to be able to go to exchange energies and ideas and thoughts, um and then also there's the accountability part too, like what I was just saying. There's a certain amount of accountability that goes unspoken when you're in something like this. Like I was saying earlier, I have to be some good version of myself to be productive for everyone else in the room, and including myself in my own training, right? So
Yeah.
um you know there's a certain level of accountability that gets meted out in the room. I appreciate
Yeah, absolutely.
that.
So yeah, so you're going where you're going through your progression and you're getting more skilled, you're getting into your upper belts. And if I could ask, what was the light switch for you as far as training goes? Like when you're going into, maybe you're going into your purple, your brown
Hmm.
belt. What do you remember, like the moment or like the concept, or do you remember sort of the situation where things started to fall in place for you, where you started to connect the dots, or is that just always happening? Do you remember like anything specific, like maybe a concept you guys were working on, or
There's been a few, right? There's been a couple. I feel like sometimes, like your game, you develop your jujitsu game.
right?
It's unique to you, right? Yours is
Yeah,
much different than mine is, and mine's much different than Mike's, and so on and so forth. I think that for me, it was well, two. There was two things, and they both happened. One late in blue and one early in purple. Late in blue belt, I became obsessed with leg locks. I was like, if I could reap your leg, I would do it in a heartbeat. I didn't care. Didn't care if I was in the gi, no gi, and
right.
it was ankle locks and toe holds. That I heel hooks weren't. I didn't really mess with too much at that point. But toe holds and ankle locks. Oh my god, there was a point, it was so bad that Mike came to me one day and leaned in, and he was like, "Hey, you realize we have this thing called passing in jujitsu too, right? You try that out once in a while instead of,
Right,
But then jokingly, he came back and he goes, you know, you you got to look at it this way. He goes, the leg lock attacking is great. He goes, but couple that with passing, and now you've got a complete system. You can go one way or the other. You
right.
can threaten the leg lock and go for the pass. You can threaten the pass and go for the leg lock. And for me, that like it was as simple as that might sound. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like, oh my god, like that's holy Christ! And then that opened up a whole new avenue to me. Then I became really interested in passing the guard because I realized I had like a safety net of a leg lock if that wasn't going to go right for me. The other was learning, not to get too particular here, but learning over under. Um,
I was just thinking of that.
yeah, so I have a pretty mangled left ear, and it's part of the reason why it's mangled is because I what I took to over under like a duck to water. I would under over my grandmother if I could. I just didn't. I wouldn't care. Just everybody didn't matter. I was trying it, and I even did it on Bernardo Faria.
Well, of course you have to if you
have
get a
to
chance
out of
to roll with
respect,
him.
So, but all kidding aside, like I was doing it wrong for so long that I wound up grinding my ear into the cauliflower or whatever because I was hitting the belt knot all the time, just putting my head in the wrong
I
spot.
think one of my ribs is mangled because of your over unders.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I hear
um,
you. I was just thinking
but
that, like,
but
yeah,
over under for me, that was a point. And again, Mike, talking with him and him kind of guiding me, like, hey, try this, do this, try this variation, do that thing. And then me with my constant curiosity and research, video after video after video, just hammering away at it for months and months. I remember that I was sitting with Mike one night and he's like, look, he's like, the over under is a single leg. And I was like, what single leg? What are you talking about? And he goes, well,
right.
look, you're on a single leg, you're on the hip. It's all hip control between this and deep half guard and half guard. And that. He's like, it all leads to the single leg. Like, again, one of these moments where I'm like,
Right.
so those, you asked about two moments, and I'd say those two moments for me were like pretty eye-opening in the sense of like changing, having someone tell you something and having it shift your perspective
Right.
dramatically
Yeah.
over something. Because from that moment, I started experimenting and branching out into deep half guard, which I became pretty decent at for a stretch, and liked going to that position. And then from there, I learned wrestling in reverse. So I learned
Right.
from jujitsu, learned how to wrestle up first from the double unders and from deep half guard or over under and deep half guard. I learned to wrestle up and get on that single leg. And from there, I developed an appreciation of wrestling overall, because then
Right.
from there, you have to start learning the body controls and, hip controls and everything else. So, so I learned wrestling in reverse.
That's funny that you say that because that's literally what I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't learn wrestling from standing. I learned wrestling from, getting beat up on the bottom, playing
Yep.
guard, and then transitioning from trying to, let me
Yep.
stress this, okay?
Yep. Yeah. No, I get you.
From butterfly guard, and then understanding that eventually I got to get a top game going to some
Yeah.
degree. So I
Yeah.
have to learn how to wrestle up, and it's still a work in progress. But it's funny that you say that because I'm literally going through that right now. I'm
Yeah. And
realizing that I'm doing wrestling in reverse,
right.
which is
No,
fine, but it's like you said, it's another tool to have in your tool bag,
yeah. And that's
so
the beautiful part about jujitsu, right? You don't just stop. Like you hear a lot of like karate, and not to pick on karate, but it's the more popular one, or has been for a long time. And you hear about a lot of karate people who get their black belt, and then it's always, I used to do karate.
yeah,
I used to do this.
right,
And I don't, I there when I was like Jeet Kune Do, there was an instructor there one night, and he said that, he said, don't be the old guy who's sitting around going, I used to do something. If
right,
you love doing something, continue to do it for as long as you physically can. And then when you
absolutely,
physically can't, start trying to figure out another way to keep it in your life. Teach, instruct, write, whatever it is.
right,
But when you really grab onto something, if something really grabs your interest, don't be that guy. Don't be the guy who
yeah,
says, I used to. So
yeah.
in this case, like I'm gonna do jujitsu for until the wheels fall off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Until they're
So,
carting me out up on that elevator in the back. Whatever.
so yeah, yeah. So it's funny. So this is a good segue. So
Yeah.
you received your black belt 2022?
I should probably know.
Right. Well, like
Yeah, I think it was 22. Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
been a
think
couple
so.
years, right?
Yeah, a couple of years. Yeah,
But
yeah.
so then now segueing into now you are teaching.
Yeah, yeah. So
How's that going? I'll tell the audience how that's going because you're literally
sure.
doing like a full circle right now.
Yeah. Thank you. So growing up in martial arts, having these instructors that I looked up to, I had two of them, Mr. Barron and Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan was like, he was probably 18, 19 years old at the time. Mr. Barron was probably my age or a little older, my age currently, or a little older. But those two people like showed me all kinds of different things, from kindness to standing up for myself, building confidence. They had such an impression on me at a young age
Right.
that I'm 46 and I can still remember their name, you know, so that's like
Yeah. Yeah.
the kind of impression they left. And then all the lessons that they gave you, and the hard lessons sometimes we had to learn. You know, I'm speaking out in line, I'm joking around with my friends. Well, you're gonna learn how to push up on your knuckles. You know, you're gonna. So in any case, yeah. So fast forward to, you know, I think it was the August 22. So say August of 20. I got my black belt in July. In August of 22, our kids program at the Fishkill location, the person who was running it was going off to college and they needed someone to do it. And my son happened to be in the program at the time. So I got talking to Mike and I'm like, oh, why don't I just try, you know? And I had taught a bit at Purple Belt and a little bit at Brown. I was running one of the adults classes at
And
Purple.
by the way, you're an excellent teacher,
Ah,
because
thanks, man.
I remember you ran a bunch of those classes that we were in, and you know, first of all, everybody there is, I feel like, is a good teacher, but I specifically remember you being very patient, and just the way, just the way you know, you conducted yourself, and your style was very very appealing.
Thank
So
you.
we're lucky to have you, man. Definitely,
I
really mean
appreciate
that.
that. All right, thank you. You know, with the kids, you know, teaching adults is similar and vastly different than teaching children.
Just bigger
You're
kids.
an educator, you understand.
Oh
I
yeah,
saw the smile right
yeah.
away. I'm married to an educator, so I a teacher, so I understand. But you know, so in August of 2022, I start teaching, and you know, I wanted to kind of bring those kids the similar experience that I had growing up in martial arts, and to have someone to look up to, someone to you know, give them some guidance, be their buddy, you know, the whole thing, and then also show them this martial art that I happen to love, and I know that they're, you know, they're there willingly coming through the door twice a week, 3 times a week. It's never a problem. If you've ever been to one of my classes, the way it usually starts is they all come in, you know, I get there at 5:15, the class starts at 5:30. So they know now that I get there at 5:15. So the kids race and bug their parents to get them there at 5:15 so that they have 15 minutes before class starts, and they
Right.
run around, they play their own games, they self-organize. And it's just the energy just gets brought up in the room. You know, I
Awesome.
work a mildly high stress job. I manage IT for a, you know, local government around here, and you know, it can be stressful on days. And those 2 days that I get to teach those kids, and my son's in the class, you know,
Right.
I jokingly refer to it as the best drug I've ever taken in my life. You know,
Yeah.
when I leave there, that ride home, I just feel like I feel fulfilled. That dopamine just hits, and you just feel good. You know, you
That's
feel
awesome,
the
man.
good nature of humanity. And then
Yeah.
through that, you know, you meet a lot of the parents, and the parents are great people. And, you know, your network expands, and you get to, you know, be a part of these kids' lives.
Yeah. And you're sharing the art, and you're sharing, you know, everything that was shared with you when you were
Yeah.
younger, and you're just making the world, you know, like, just a better place. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. Your son's in the class, so
Yep.
he's seeing you in a leadership role, and you know, that's gonna obviously leave a huge impression on him.
That's
And
right.
you know, as you know, my son is involved as well, and
Yep. Yep.
you know, the days that I want to go, or sometimes the days I don't want to drive him in, I'm tired. You know, we've all worked all day, and it's like, you know what? The rate of return is so much higher, you know, like, just, you know, sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do, and that's a skill set in and of itself,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
it
know?
is. It really is. And then, you know, the other one of the other, you know, not to be selfish, but one of the benefits for me of teaching is that when you instruct or teach something, you have to know the material yourself, right?
Right,
And it forces me to, one, go outside of my normal box. You know, I've developed a game of jujitsu. There's things I like to do. There's things I'll never do. There's things in the middle I'll try. You know,
right,
but it forces me to engage in areas that I might otherwise not pay as much mind to. You know,
right,
the all the different positions and sweeps and submissions, and then taking those and trying to distill them down into a way that makes it engaging for kids to want to learn.
right.
There's only so many ways that you can learn shoulder pressure or being choked, you know, without
Right,
not
right.
being that fun.
Yeah.
So I try to incorporate, we mentioned earlier the term CLA, or constraint led approach. So
Yeah.
I try to gamify a lot of what we do in that kids class, and take the lessons that I've learned in jujitsu and try to apply them in a way that these kids will engage with. And the success rate is pretty high. I've taken kids who, they're very super shy, or they're not athletic, or they just kind of don't want to be there. Mom or dad, don't
Yeah.
want to push them. And watch those kids within weeks like completely turn corners, and
Right.
show up and like be the first ones there, and they just want to, like, they just want to go all the time. And so to
Yeah.
watch these kids grow is also like, it's a huge privilege for me too,
That's,
to be
yeah.
part of that part of their life, that formative years of their life. And I
That's
hope one
amazing.
day they all look back and at least one of them goes like, that Coach Al, he was all right, so
Yeah, I'm sure they will, Al.
yeah, I'm sure they will
You
too.
know, that's,
Not to belabor it or go too long, but like the other part is like how hilarious a lot of these kids can be,
of
or
course.
how endearing they can be. I
Yeah,
was I was leaving. Well, I don't want to say their names because I get a little weird with kids and internet and stuff. But
of course.
we have one little girl in our class. She's about 7 years old. Comes up to like my hip. And I was leaving one day, and I right before I had some surgery last year, and she gives me this. She kind of looks at me and she goes, "I'll see you when you get back." And she hands me this card, and
She's calling you out
it was
already.
this beautiful little card that she hand wrote, and it said, I hope your surgery goes well,
Oh,
Coach
that's
Al.
so
Come back
good.
soon." She drew a picture of me, like, going like this, and it was really cute. So there's
Well,
like moments like that they make your heart feel good.
well, just so you know, and I know you know
Sure.
this story, and I know you know this. One of the, my son's been training for a little less than 2 years, and one of his first memories actually on the mat is rolling around with you, and I have it on video. And he talks about you all the time, and he's always asking about you. And
Yeah,
you see him like once in a blue moon at this point,
sure.
but he's always asking about you. So you are, just in case you're wondering, you are definitely leaving an impression on people.
That's
So
awesome. Thank you.
that's a good thing.
And your
And
son, your
listen,
son is a
Al,
great kid. You're
yeah, well,
raising a
I'm
good one
trying,
there.
like
Yeah,
that's all we can do as parents,
of course, of course.
and I mess up a lot, but I try to, I try to make up for it as much as I can.
Yeah, we all
Um,
make mistakes.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
no angel either. I've made plenty of my own, and I'm going to continue
yeah,
to make them. But that's, if you make your mistakes, you learn from them, and you take the lessons out of them that you can, and then you move on.
and
You
that's
keep
jujitsu as
moving
well,
forward,
right?
and that's jujitsu as well. It can't
Um,
you can't sit in the pocket too long. You're going to get your arm taken.
yeah. Listen, I want to be respectful of your time, Al, and I do appreciate you coming on. Just if you have
Yeah.
any final thoughts for the listeners, like just any bit of knowledge that sort of encapsulates sort of your experience in jiu-jitsu, or any advice that anyone's ever given you that sort of like stuck with you all these years. I mean, you've been practicing what, over almost 15 years now
Yeah, getting 14 years.
plus,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like, is there anything that was given to you and that you still hold on to, and as
So
far as
much,
advice
man.
goes?
It's
I'm sure.
it's hard to like there's some, it's completely the person I was, the moment before I took the step and the moment after I took the step over the threshold of the first gym I went to. I am a completely different person in that moment right there.
Right.
Taking that step over the threshold. What I would say to anybody listening is, one, try to bring the best version of yourself that you can every day. And that doesn't mean that you're, some David Goggins type running, ultra marathons every day. No, it could just be that you got up today, right?
Right.
Or it could be that, you did something you couldn't do before. It's one thing I preach to my kids in the class is especially when I see one of them struggling and failing to get something, and you notice, I know what that feels like, and then you see the look and you see the embarrassment start to set in. And I give this speech all the time. I tell them, I don't care how many times that you mess this up. I'm never ever going to be upset with you doing this once, twice, 800 times. All I care about is that you come back and you continue to try each and every time. And I think that goes for kids and adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy as an adult to say, I'm going to do jujitsu. I'm going to show up. And everybody show up, you get bit by the bug, you got all the jujitsu t-shirts, and then you get your blue belt,
Right.
and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is not, oh man, this is not blue belt's not a magic thing, and I'm still getting beat up. And what the
Yeah.
hell? And advice out there for anybody who's experiencing that: hold on.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is literally this the
Yep.
entire time,
Peaks and valleys,
including
right?
at black belt and after. I'm going to
Yep.
continue doing this,
Yeah.
So it's about finding that baseline, trying to maintain somewhere in that range, but understanding and being honest with yourself enough that you're not always going to be here and you're not always going to stay here.
Right.
You're always going to be in the middle somewhere, and try to bring yourself back there.
And that's where the growth is going to happen, right?
That's where the growth the growth happens here and here. It never happens when you're winning all the time. That's not when the growth happens. I'm sorry to tell anybody. It's when you got to ask yourself those hard questions and have those hard thoughts and those long quiet rides home from the gym.
The crying rides home.
Oh, please! You know how many times I've screamed at a traffic light? Come on.
Absolutely.
I've almost dented my steering wheel banging it. I get it. It's a tough journey, but it's fulfilling. And at the end, like, I would not have changed a single thing about what I've done, especially with how lucky I got with the group of people that I get to spend this time with all the time, kids and adults. The gym is it's a magical place, and I try to bring as many people, outsiders, we'll call them casuals, right? Outsiders in as possible to get them to experience the same thing. And it's so if you're listening and you're struggling right now, just know that that's part of the deal, and you're going to learn to struggle. You're going to learn to survive. You're going to learn to survive in those struggles. And we'll slap hands and bump fists again, and we'll go again and again and again. So
awesome.
There's my thoughts.
Awesome, Al. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure the listeners gotten a lot of great advice from you and knowledge, and I know I always do. And again, I want to extend my gratitude to you and to Jiu-Jitsu and to to everyone at EGA, because I know they've definitely helped me in a lot of tough times, and I know they continue to do so, and I know that they've helped you. And yeah, man, we'll just keep on keeping on, and I'll see you on the mats.
I'll see you on Sunday. All right, buddy. Good talking to you. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, bye.
Take care.